So next up, we've got Suzy, and she's our local hero, here to talk about all things that she's doing at the CoRE Learning Foundation. I'll just unmute her. Here we go. Hello, Suzy.
Hello, Jessica. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, no, really well, thanks. After 3 weeks in isolation, I'm ready to do something different, I think. But
I bet.
I'm okay. Yes, my extrovert type of character is being very challenged by this lockdown situation.
I know. I hear you. Yes. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. I think I first saw you present at a Women in Mining WA conference, I think back in like 2014. And then we officially met at the AIG Gold Conference in Kalgoorlie just a couple of months later. So I just had a couple of questions for you. So you started as a geologist and then have gone into education. So I just wanted to know a bit more about your story.
Yes, well, I think I was born to love rocks and climb volcanoes and understand the earth and what it was all about and the great outdoors. And I really wanted to, that was all that was on my mind from a very, very young age. I grew up in the Western District Volcanic Plain in Victoria. And so, you know, I had volcanoes in the backyard, so to speak. And yeah, as a 21-year-old, off I went to Telfer, left the East Coast and off I went to Telfer to explore my passion and be a geologist. And I loved it. I love being a geologist. I love the thrill of the chase, like what Adam was just talking about. And I started in the mine. Actually, I started on the Telfer Underground program, which was just beginning when I started. And so getting into that and started in the mine and then went into exploration, which I really, really enjoyed. There was no greater thrill than watching that return come out of the sump and, you know, you hit your sulfides or you got your target. So I just love that particular type of work and being really raw science, you know, using your observations and putting that data all together and then creating that story and then going to test that story. So that's why I always say that geology is the rawest of sciences and it's the best example of science to actually find something that's necessary to sustain our society. However, things sort of changed for me. I had a couple of personal mass extinction events, so to speak, at the height of when I was sort of getting to the best, and I had to diversify. And so in that situation, I used the best of my STEM qualities and put them into use into education, I suppose. But on the second hand, you know, like education was the only thing available to me at that stage as being a single parent of 3 young kids. And at that stage too, I think the saying around town here in Perth was, you want to find a geologist, go hail a taxi. It was pretty difficult times in getting a job. So I went into education. So I guess I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I'm actually creating that awareness of the resources industry or geoscience literacy, and to make sure that we have a healthy pipeline and pathways for our students to move forward along and into the resources industry. Because let's face it, you know, where is all our homegrown talent? You know, I noted that as a 21-year-old in Telfer, so many new recruits were coming onto site, but we're all from the eastern states. There was only 2 that were from WA, and I noted that for a start. You know, where's all the homegrown talent? The other thing I noted was why did I go to school? Because, you know, they didn't really teach me how to be a scientist and what have you. It wasn't that real science. It was all textbooks and worksheet type stuff. And as I was progressing through the geology, and working in the costines and stuff like that, I began to note how things from my secondary school education were popping up. And I thought, why weren't we told that this is how it applies in the real world? Or at least made aware of that. So when I started in education, it was those observations I took as a 21, 22-year-old and thought, well, there's no way that my students are going to work from worksheets, work out of textbooks. There's going to be an awareness of the earth and how the earth works and geoscience. And get sciences doing and get a pathway, a healthier pathway into geosciences.
Yep.
But then when I started in education, you know, blowing my socks off, there was only 4 schools in Western Australia that were actually even doing geology. So in a resources hotspot like WA, the pipelines were cut off.
Yep.
There was no awareness of you know, potential career paths for, you know, the commodities that are actually resourced out of here in Western Australia, let alone the rest of Australia. And so that was the beginning of the core learning journey.
There you go. It's amazing. And so you've won a bunch of awards for this as well. Can you tell me a bit about them?
Oh, there's a couple, yeah. It's been an evolving journey, which started in 2004 with this concept of making the classroom a real world classroom. Basically, I brought the way that the kids work, that I worked as a geologist in the field, I brought those practices into the classroom. So that's why we work off the motto #TheRealClassroom. And I started off by doing science is doing, engineering is doing, and no chocolate cake recipes, true investigative work, and oh gosh, I'm going on to share screen here. And look, this is the first time I'm doing this as well. Investigative work where science students are about going back to their basics, like measuring, observing, and recording. We call this more measure, observe, record, and create investigations which are real world scenarios. So I'm just going to show you an investigation from one of my teachers at Kent Street. Here we go. I'm going on to it now. This at Kent Street, which is a mature school, and this particular young lass is a year 12 girl, and she has done CoRE since year 8. And these investigation reports, this is about that creating that awareness that through CoRE over a number of years, we go through and we develop the process skills, the problem solving skills, those creativity skills which these kids need to then understand how to then be a scientist. So then to gather the data that is necessary and then use that data to create the story. I've always said to the students, love the data and let the data tell the story. Now, this investigative format is something that I used back in Telfer and then later in Kalgoorlie, which was then brought into the classroom way back in 2004, 2005. So you can see it's quite a high level type of report where they go on and write about the main concepts. Like you even got JAWK here. Now, what year 12 student would know what a JAWK is? You know, and here our year 12 students, under the guidance of Kathleen Booth here at Kent Street, are learning about nickel sulfide deposits, the komatiites and Kambalda nickel, and then also the hydrothermal. You know, they're learning about the cabbage leaf model, for goodness sakes. So I'm going to quickly scroll through this just to show you the level that we can get our year 12s to do and do real science. But this, on the other hand, they do such high order thinking, what have you, but you know, our education system isn't allowing this to actually be their dominant form of assessment. They still have to do those 3-hour exams. But yeah, so this is the beginning of how the core learning model works. And I think you'll agree that this is really, really quite good stuff. You know, using pancake batters and beads to look at the viscosity of lava flows, komatiitic lava flows, to look at where the sulfides, the nickel sulfides actually stop within the flow and then potentially use that as exploration tools. Now, this young lass is either going to become I think she might be becoming an engineer, mining engineer, but that's all right, but she's going to have a great geological background. But the key to the story is here that these kids in our core classrooms are actually doing learning. They're learning to think, they're learning to make mistakes, they're learning to collaborate, because we work in business units, which I'm going to go through in a minute and show you how it actually works and how this model works. And they then are expected to enhance their numeracy and their literacy by gaining geoscience literacy and scientific literacy at the same time. So this journey has taken 15 odd years, and it's one which had a lot of roadblocks. It's one which really challenged the traditional mindset of the learning system, and one which is still not really truly being acknowledged. And that is, we need to have this contemporary aspect of where students have to understand why they are learning. So we call it CARMA, contextual, authentic, relevant, meaningful and applicable learning. And we have to de-silo it. In our core classes, we make sure we have the geological context. And within that, we show them where the physics is, where the chemistry is, and where the biology is as well in some cases. So, you know, we're making them see how it all comes together and how they use all that theory and understanding to actually tell the story. So it really is quite high order. And secondly, I think this is what we're well known for, is our field trips. We actually take them out into the real world. And a field trip is not an excursion and is not a camp. We actually get them out there. We get them, you know, even as young as year 7, we take them out to Cottesloe and look at the Tamala limestone and the rhyzoliths, and we look at the cross bedding in the aeolian systems, and then we take them up to the karst system with the caves and getting them to understand the effects of natural acid rain and solution solvents, solutes, all the way through to Kalgoorlie in year 8, and they actually they went to St Barbara's, I think, this last year, I can't remember. And then year 9 they do the mineral sands. Year 10 we do LNG, and then year 11 and year 12, we even swim with the stromatolites. We look at the whole global system of looking at how the banded iron ore formations occurred and how that is such an important part of our economy, and now the automation and the technological space going into that. And then in year 12, we do the Yilgarn Creighton field trip, where we go and visit mine sites such as Western Areas and Edna May. So, you know, we've had an affiliation over a number of years where these students, even from year 7, 8, go out to mine sites. They get to see what's actually happening from exploration. They see the whole value chain, exploration all the way through to consumerism. And our PBLs, we call them PBLs, are actually developed and based on these, because we have separate projects, contextual projects. And because of the way that the world is evolving, we're actually now including space exploration and the use of, I think it's in year 7, one of the PBLs is using iron ore processing plants and adapting them to a Martian landscape, using drop zones, using parachutes or something, I don't know, and then getting it back and doing that, or asteroid mining as they do it in year 9, looking for the exotic metals that are used for the electronics of the future. So in short, we try and make it #the real classroom. We work in the class. It's definitely totally different to what you see. There are no rows of desks. Their kids are in what we call business units, and we work around making sure that they have 7 to 8 weeks to actually do this. So this is another one of Kathleen's, Kathleen Booth from Kent Street. This is another one of her projects, or PBLs as we call it. Now this is the end result, because at the end of a PBL, the students have to present it. It's like they're presenting it to a board, their project. And their project is based in a STEAM framework. It has a STEAM framework, and it has a number of what we call PCs. So this one's called Beach to Boardroom. So obviously the beach has a heavy mineral sands focus of the Perth Basin, from Geraldton down through to the southwest there. So not only the heavy mineral sands, but we also look at the Tamala limestone. The BU is the business unit, and in this case it's called garnet, because we're looking at, well, garnet's a heavy mineral sands. And each team or business unit has a leader, has a fit break manager, which I think we're going to be doing a fit break after this.
We will.
A timeline manager, health and safety, we call it OSPREY, observing safety, protecting resources, environment and you, and a town hall manager. So the town hall is this presentation that they do. It's about an 8-week program that they do it in. And so these are the PCs. The first PC is digital disruption. And so the students are engaging all their other talents, their ICT, their digital talents to actually design something that is scientifically literate and aware. So, so in this case, they've used iMovie. Also note that we integrate the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals into our projects. So this is a sway presentation that was done at the end. Now, normally they stand up in front of the class, but in these COVID situations, we have found that CoRE is very positively positioned to take advantage of this. And our students were working remotely to actually compile this as we're coming towards the end of term 1. So just have a listen to this. Can you hear it?
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? Your computers. I repeat, can you please your computers? And you put your phone away. You'll act like you never talked before. Put your phones in the bag before the principal bursts in the door. What are you? Instagram, Snapchat.
It's cutting out a little bit now, sorry.
Okay. But this is just a way of how they're getting to understand how within heavy mineral sands, there are particular elements, and these elements are used within technologies. So getting an understanding of a beach is not just a beach. There are actually minerals there, minerals that are a resource which is used for the development of different technologies. You know, in terms of their coding, they're just amazing in what they actually do in their coding. In some cases, there's this one student in Kathleen's class who uses 3 different languages to make a website to communicate, again, their scientific language. And then they had to obviously build electronics, but they did it in a way that they understood how the metals were used.
For PC3, our BU created a 3D model of a TV, showcasing the evolution of phones and TVs on a 3D line, then showing what the demand and production of the 2 electronics is like. We also looked at the atomic structures of some main materials collected in Australia, which are needed to create these electronics. Our TV model has 3 main components, the first one being about the past and present of technology and how it's created. The second component is about how the materials needed to create electronics, such as TVs and phones, are collected. The third component is to look at the atomic structure of 3 materials, which can be found in both electronics, and how to tell their structures apart. For PC...
Okay, yeah. And then we have the investigation, which is the one which is not a chocolate cake recipe. And here they looked at the effects of acid rain in the development of a karst landscape, so to speak. In association with the Swan Coastal Plain and the Perth Basin. So these are all their own ideas, using basic things from jars to, just not acids, nothing extravagant. But what it is about that measure, observe, record, get the data, and then let the data tell the story. They're developing their numeracy through their graphing, and then interpreting their graphs to understand what they actually mean. So identifying patterns and trends and what do they actually mean. So in an essence, how am I going for time, Jessica?
Yeah, we're getting a little bit tight now, but yeah, you can finish up, that's no problem.
Yep. Okay, so that's just an example of what we actually do in CoRE. 90 or 51% of our alumni are female. And I think that's got a lot to do with having STEM role models day to day within the classroom situation, encouraging the students to actually be the best they can be and giving them the awareness of what actually happens out in the real world. We have a significant alumni that are actually out there working now. Our oldest is about 30, and they're all working for companies such as FMG, Rio, Saracen, Northern Star, you name it, across the commodities. We've got some in LNG, working with Woodside as petroleum engineers, etc. So this model of hashtag the real classroom, bringing it in and making sure that students understand where and how their learning applies, and how the purpose of their learning. And I need to let you know that this is not just about those top 10%. These are the kids which are going to be very, very important in the future. The data translators, those that can switch from technical to non-technical roles. And this is where our focus is going to lie, or has been lying for the last couple of years, in making sure that what we do for our PBLs actually is very, very reflective of the changing and evolving world.
That's amazing. I really love what you're doing. So thank you.